First commandment reads as such: I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods but me. In both the Exodus reading and the Leviticus reading, they're identical. There's no difference in the two. Matter of fact, if you look in your book of common prayer, in the Decalogue before the service, there is no difference. It is perfectly written. So I ask you this question: is there anyone wrong? Is there anyone wrong or distasteful to a Christian to engage only in monotheism? Monotheism is one God. To avoid bowing down before pagan deities, grotesque idols, figments of the imagination, of demented and perverted pagans whom they ascribe carnal human lusts. Now, since God is the divine creator, since He made the universe, the heavens and the earth, and since He made us, since He is the designer, the creator, the sustainer, the ruler of the whole universe, is it somehow wrong of Him to demand that we recognize Him and Him only? This is rather a logical commandment, wouldn't you think? I mean, what would the whole world be like if they acknowledged one true God? First, the religions of India and most of Africa and Asia, for that matter, of the false religions here in the Western professing Christian world, would be totally altered, wouldn't they? About the truth of one true God. If they understood who God is and what is His nature and character, why He created us and placed us here upon this earth, and where humanity is heading, they would be living their lives according to a divinely revealed word of that God in awe, and they would fear Him, instead of living their lives in abject ignorance of the true God, worshiping demons, the host of heavens, or in some cases Satan himself. Consider for a moment the nation of India. I was watching a show called Idiot Abroad, and it inspired me as I was writing this. If you haven't watched the show, watch it. It's very funny. But here is a country of polytheism, a belief in Vishnu. The spirit of worship of the Hindu religion holds one of the largest nations in the face of this earth in its superstitious grip. Here is a protein-deficient nation, a poverty-stricken, squalid, disease-ridden, overpopulated, undernourished land of disease, starvation, and death. It is asserted that there are more cattle in India than in the United States. But because of their religion, reverted the cow as sacred to the Indians. They will not eat their cow, which is one God placed on this earth as a food, and to provide clothing, even to shelter for mankind, thus bringing upon themselves a horrifying curse of malnutrition, disease, and death. I had a Marine in my unit in 29 Palms who was Indian, and we had a barbecue to raise money for the Marine Corps Ball. And one of my Hispanic Marines had hey Rajni, look at him eating your God as he chomped down on a hamburger. Ponder what you know of the world's so-called great religions for a few moments. What have the religions of major nations really done for them? It seems almost oxymoronic that when one finds the most degenerate, squalid, disease-ridden areas of the earth, one will also find pagan, polytheistic religions. Even though the so-called professing Christian West, or here in the United States or in Europe, are divided up into more than 400 different denominations, it does not really know the true meaning of God as they should. And it seems that the mere fact that they are at very least they are monotheistic, believing in one God, has produced comparatively greater prosperity and physical health. In many ways, the first commandment is the greatest commandment of them all. In summarizing the 10 commandments, as Jesus does, and we said this morning when we start the service, Jesus came and he says, what do you feel is when the scribes came to him and said, can you summarize the law? To love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And then he summarized the last 6 commandments by saying, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Remember what you read in Romans in the first chapter when Paul said, when you come to understand much more of the invisible things of the great Creator of God by looking at the things which He has made. Whether you study the incredible complexity of the tiniest of our insects or learn about the marvelous symbiotic relationship between the giant whales that are hanging out in Antarctica and the small plankton that they feed on, whether you study the migratory patterns of Arctic terns or learn of the marvelous, intricate, and law-abiding properties of minerals, you are studying only the tiniest portion of the marvels of the great mind of God. He has thought out, He has planned, He has designed, and then He produced. If this planet was only 1 mile closer to the sun, we'd not be able to live on it. If it was 1 mile further away from the sun, we'd not be able to live on it. Think about that for a second. How perfectly God's creation was in putting everything together. And science is just slowly starting to get the tiniest portion of what He did in His perfection to get this planet right. And to get us the way we are. From the vastness of the limitless universe of our own solar system to all the beautiful, harmonious, and intrinsically complex and interdependent of the symbiotic life forms of our ecosystem. As much as we complain about the mosquito, it needs us. It needs us to feed its offspring. I hate them, but they need us. You are looking at the handiwork of God in the miracles of babies, the way they come about, in the way that we see alligators living in certain areas with wildebeest. I mean, it's all part of God. But look at yourself today. The great possible intelligence that you have come to know through your 5 senses. The most superb collection of sensory perceptions, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding in our material universe, of which you have come to know through your sense of smell, touch, feel, sight, and hearing, is yourself that of man. Man stands at the very top of the food chain. Man reigns supreme over the physical earth, don't we? We're able to force all other creatures, including huge elephants, giant whales, to do our bidding. Think about that for a second. A dolphin cannot make a bed. As smart as we want to say dolphins are, or porpoises for that fact, we want to say how smart they are, let them figure out a math problem to figure out 4 plus 4 without trying to teach them that. They cannot. But we can. Consider yourself. Who gave you the capacity to love? What is a laugh? What is a sneeze? What is a feeling? Since our bodies desperately need salt to survive, what mindless section process determined that salt tastes good to us? Is salt really that good tasting? To us it is, though. We need it. Did you know that if you make custard ice cream, you cannot make it without salt or it tastes too sweet? And you won't like it. There's salt in ice cream. Why are sunsets beautiful? Why is beautiful music pleasing to our senses? Why is it that when we are hungry, What is a beautifully prepared, nutritious meal so savory, so tasteful, and so enjoyable? We're the only animal that can sit down and figure out how to have a prime rib, asparagus, and potatoes at the same time. What other animal prepares all these meals for itself? Here's a crocodile, here's a wildebeest. Crocodile, eat wildebeest. It really doesn't taste good without a little bit of Dijon mustard on it, and maybe if you could throw in a potato, and I'd really like a salad before it. They don't think that up. We do. We're the only animal that does that. You don't see a bird going up to a tree. I like one of these berries, and I think to go with that, to add to that flavor, I really need one of these berries over here. And oh, by the way, can I get a little glass of wine? No. Think how wonderfully you are created. While the nations of mankind are utterly ignorant to the fact, and while most professing Christians go about their daily lives seldom confessing it, even our ability to touch, taste, feel, experience comes from the Creator. It comes from God. The first commandment is the most logical, simple, and easy to understand of all the 10 commandments. I'll tell you this much right now. Since the very divine Creator who gives us every beat of our hearts, every breath that we breathe, I know I'm sounding like a police album here, but the very ability to experience lift exists, since our life is a practical fact of the tiniest extension of His life. In that He is our designer, beginner, life giver, sustainer. He is the most logical. It isn't that the most logical commandment you could ever imagine, that this very supreme being commands that we place no other gods, quote unquote, in front of Him. But what are other gods? We talked about this when we talked about Mars Hill a few weeks ago. The most obvious infraction of this first commandment seems to be, at first glance, pagans bowing down before man-made idols of wood or stone. The Bible contains a myriad of chapters condemning this heathen practice. But the Apostle Paul reveals this covetousness is idolatry. Many of the 10 commandments sort of overlap. All of them are interdependent, each upon an integral part of each other. However, in a unique way, the first and the last commandment are closely intertwined with each other. Poor Sarah. Anything you lust for, anything you covet, is something which gets between you and the true God. And what do people truly covet today? First, look at our greedy materialism in the world today. Look at how we're greedy in a materialism way. Millions spend their lives at the altar of covetousness, fanatically pursuing such a will-o'-the-wisp goals for more money, more fame, more importance, unless ego trip. Or how about the appropriation and approval of others, homes, automobiles, electronic toys, glamorous trips, dizzying array of manufactured commodities, which represent the sole purpose in living for millions of human beings. We even have a term for it: keeping up with the Joneses. Thus, millions of professing Christians, as they pursue daily after more of everything, they're indeed guilty of covetousness. False gods can become, or false goals, can become false gods to us.